I don't really buy into the whole doomer versus accelerationist thing. It's way more complicated.
A hot
it's
take.
not
Okay.
That's one of the things that I think most people don't understand is that we love our jobs and we want to talk about our jobs. So when you get us talking about our jobs, we will not stop.
This is fascinating, man. Like, I just, at a tactical, granular level, wanted to learn a term about AI security. And the term is choke points, right? I asked the question, and the answer is like global geopolitics, nation level. Like, right? My brain hurts from zooming out to the super macro view of society and then to the super micro view of how I can augment the piddliest little thing with AI, right? Like, is this a new phenomenon? Hey, welcome. We're talking about safety and alignment in large language models. Quite the brain-bending topic. For starters, we've got AI surpassing human intelligence in certain tasks. Like in the board game Go, for example, which humans have played for hundreds, possibly thousands of years. It beat us. And the machines trained themselves. They didn't even need us old meatbags. So that's crazy and disruptive. But then AI development isn't just about achieving higher levels of intelligence to lead to scientific breakthroughs. It's also about aligning that intelligence, to get cold fusion or solve climate change or quantum computing. A smarter machine and algorithm, how do we make sure that it aligns to what humanity needs? And what does humanity need? Like, that is a hairy problem needing integrative thinking, if there ever was one. So I'm a little flooded by these big questions. I'm a little overwhelmed. So I turned on the Simply Cyber community equivalent of the bat signal. I went to the AI ML chat asking for help, and an AI security expert in California answered my call. He's in the heart of where this cutting-edge AI research is happening. He has an awesome blog where he thinks deep thoughts about AI philosophy, safety, security, and how to get farther from Skynet and closer to multivac. Let's go get Phil. Hey, Phil, thanks so much for being here today. I've been excited and anticipating this chat. We've got this technology disruption happening that is bigger than mobile, bigger than the internet, maybe bigger than electricity in terms of its disruptive impact to how we live our lives and those risks and opportunities it brings. It's fascinating, but it's also scary. That's why I called you. First question, how are you even able to sleep at night with this stuff going on and you're being in the middle of it?
I sleep fine, but that's mostly because existential dread is exhausting. But honestly, it's exciting. I live in the future. I live where robot cars drive around the city and there's nobody in them. I see them going to the depot every night, and it's wonderful. But it's also concerning. AI is moving so fast that every week there's something new that either blows my mind or makes me go, oh, that's going to be a problem. And that's why I stay involved. Just sitting back and hoping for the best isn't the best strategy.
Oh, totally. I think of the 4 risk treatment options, transfer, accept, mitigate, avoid, right? By default, it's acceptance. So if you stick your head in the sand like an ostrich, you've accepted some risk and the coming wave might knock you out. And I think there's a big information asymmetry here. You know a lot more about this topic than I do, but I think that's what draws me to you, is what draws me to a Discord chat channel called AIML Chat is I know the wave is coming. I need to learn more about it. And so, thanks for answering my call to learn about it. And I think as a starting point, we've both read the book, The Coming Wave, and I want to understand from your perspective, did it make you more optimistic or pessimistic about what's coming? And then also, I don't even know the terminology to use that's considered correct. I'd like to know from more of an expert in terms of, do you say doomers? Do you say accelerationists? Like, where are you in the scale of scared to excited? And what do we call the different philosophies and camps in that scale?
Well, I don't really buy into the whole doomer versus accelerationist thing. It's way more complicated.
A hot
it's
take.
not
Okay.
it's not AI good or AI bad. It's AI happening. And we need to make sure that we control it in a way that benefits people instead of just concentrating power. So I'm not more pessimistic, but it did make me re-examine a lot of the concerns that I already had. AI isn't just about fun technologies and cool chatbots. It's about control and governance and who's shaping the future. And right now, that's mostly big corporations and governments, not the average person. So if I had to put a label on where I am, I would say that I'm more of a solar punk. sort of guy, as opposed to Cyberpunk, where we had um, corporations controlling all of the tech and controlling all of our lives, surveillance states and everything. It's more of a future where it's human centric and it helps people live better and live more sustainably, more fair. So I want progress, but I also want progress that works for us.
Wow. Well, I love that you threw out the labels I was trying to leading with and say, no, I think I've landed on something different, something I've never heard of, frankly. I think it's from science fiction literature. And then also that you're saying to frame into the correct problem statement, right? We got to start with the problem. And it's not so much about one group of people being right and the other wrong. It's more about or no AI or yes AI. It's more about the rate of speed and the rate of change and our ability to govern and control and have risk within tolerance during that inevitable coming wave. So that's very interesting. So how are we doing? Like you kind of mentioned, it sounds like the big corporations, like for example, historically there's high concentration in equity markets of the Magnificent Seven, right? From FANG to now seven. Like I think it's a large amount of the gains in the S&P 500 index, for example, are from 7 companies, historically high concentration, right? And so
Right.
I guess then you're kind of maybe cautiously optimistic, right? Or you're very muted in your optimism. Let's talk about, for example, the TECHNO-OPTIMIST manifesto, right? Like, did you find that to be too not prudent enough in the scales? And how are we doing in achieving the appropriate rate of change here?
Well, I think that the manifesto itself, the Techno-Optimist manifesto, goes too far too fast. It's basically saying just
Interesting.
full speed ahead. Let's just go, no rules, just right, regulations bad, that's it. And we've done that. We've seen that in other markets. It's the kind of thinking that got us social media disinformation, it got us surveillance capitalism, and a whole lot of other unintended consequences. If we do the same thing with AI, it's not innovation, it's just a crash waiting to happen.
Listen, I hear you, and I appreciate the information asymmetry here. I wonder if I'm going to run this through the Fabric analyze claims pattern, okay? And you might say, well, it's more nuanced, etc. But certainly the title Techno-Optimist, I mean, it does seem leaning on one side, but I gotcha. Well, thank you for that. And I think then I want to talk about the book, and that at the end of it, after I got really scared and I learned even new things to be more scared of, and this is like the nuclear arms race, right? I mean, in terms of its ability to do catastrophic things at scale, and the diffusion of generalized technology, which can be great, democratizing the world and pulling people out of poverty, but it can also put weapons in the hands of more people, right? So it's wow, that's scary. And also we see, for example, maybe the UK with a lot of regulation struggling with innovation, arguably. I'm not an expert, but I am aware that the American dictionary that spells color C-O-L-O-R and not C-O-L-O-U-R kind of won the race. And that I'm used to spelling it with a U, and it's like there is no LLM with the letter U in it that is a frontier model. So, one, I guess, what are your thoughts with respect to governing it enough, but not governing it too much that you lose your alphabet? I mean, not that that's a huge problem, but I think you get my point. And then also, Mustafa Suleyman in The Coming Wave at the end, after laying out all those issues, says, here's 10 things we can do in a multi-layered approach to walk the narrow path and get it right. So I got to know, Phil, what are your thoughts?
I think a lot of what he says makes sense. There's the research, there are safety research, audits, red teaming. It's just that it's about implementing those steps. We move very slow. AI moves very fast. That's the real big difference. And we're not going to get laws and regulation that's going to match pace. That's part of the problem. I think that the problem is really going to be what we can actually get through in reality. Things like audits, we're going to get transparency and oversight eventually, but it's going to be a long time. We will get some sort of audit authority. We will have AI laws. They're writing them now. They keep coming out, but it's not going to move nearly as fast as it needs to be. So that's one of those things that's like, yeah, we'll get it, but we just won't get it now.
Not only does regulation always lag technology, but compliance. I mean, I felt like at Sarbanes-Oxley, even 20 years later, lots of opportunities to do it well, and there were a lot of times it was done poorly.
Being able to do it well really is the point, because if you're just complying and it's just a checkbox and you're not doing it right, well, you're not going to get in trouble, but then you're going to have containment problems, and we're gonna have policy problems.
I think, do you find that there's an equivalent in your day-to-day profession, as I have as being kind of in the audit side? It's like we can talk about any standard or framework or regulation, Sarbanes-Oxley, ISO, SOC 2, whatever, and it's like, folks, if you set the correct scope and if you do it well, it's a value-adding exercise. Lots of times, and so if you have a complaint, if the complaint isn't about the framework, the complaint would be about kind of the implementation of the spirit of this thing, right? I just wonder, like, in your world, do you have a similar theme, right? Where it's like, well, this is the spirit of what I was trying to do. It can be done well if you just do it right.
No, that's exactly it. We're balancing business needs and security needs all the time. So when something doesn't work, then everything has to stop and everything has to take priority. When something's not safe, we can still go right ahead and work. And all of the security people in the background are going, but it's not safe. It's not secure. And that's what we're up against, really.
And now we're moving from the C to the R in terms of the risk, right? And it's like there's 4 risk treatment options. And if we're going to do this thing and management has decided not to mitigate it or avoid it or transfer it, they've got to accept it. And when they do that, sign here, press hard, right? Like we need to be clear that they were aware of the threats. That's their job, right? And we appropriately calibrated the inherent and residual risk, and that we had a good process for documenting that acceptance and then revisiting it later, right? You don't accept it and now we never talk about this issue again. It's something to revisit. Has that been part of your workflow and your risk work in terms of engaging with maybe a GRC team to work through a risk register or anything, an audit findings, anything like that?
Well, for sure. It's one of the things to keep in mind is that security is not a product, it's a process. And so you have to continually be running whatever audits you have, whatever tests you have, and that at the end of the day, the paperwork that just transfers over all of the responsibility to the last person up in management who said, yes, we're going to go ahead and do that thing, doesn't mean it wasn't done. It doesn't mean the risk wasn't taken. It just means it was somebody else's fault. And in the real world, it's like, great, we're going to fire a CEO, but we had a terrible catastrophe. So we need to think about it more than just whose fault is it. As long as it's not mine, then it's fine.
Very good point. Okay. So I mean, and that's a couple of themes. One is security culture. 2 is, and actually, like, I guess a cascade down from leadership of mission, vision, and goals and tone from the top. But that also, just getting back to the process part, it's about, like accounting, it's never done. It's a monthly, quarterly, daily process, big on lather, rinse, repeat in plan, do, check, act, having a management system. And then also, my point about doing a good job with a risk acceptance, should that be where management needs to go, is not just about a scapegoat. If done well, right? It can be done poorly and it can be done well. It can be used for good or evil, just like AI, right? The point there is reasonable and demonstrable due diligence and due care, right? So we adequately and prudently acted as a compass for management to help them make the right decisions. And if things did blow up and go the wrong way, here's what we would show in a court of law and a court of public opinion in terms of the due diligence and due care demonstrated. So when I when I rein it in, the conversation I feel like I'm talking to you like you're someone that I'm asking to sign the risk, right? But does the process I just described land with you and resonate with you as someone that, hey, I'm trying to help you, man. And that's why this is just how I try to enable the business with my GRC process.
No, absolutely. That's really kind of an overall security uh, lifestyle at this point. That is what we tend to do. We know the risks, we know the mitigations, we know what it's going to cost, we know what it's going to take in time, we know what it's going to take in labor, and we just say, this is what we can do, or this is the best we can do, because you can't get everything. And we just get the word as to what we're going to be allowed to do, what's in the budget, what's ready for next quarter, and we just kind of have to go, okay, well, that's close enough, or maybe that's not, and we need to work on that. But again, it's a process, and it's the same thing. You have to build it into your budget. You have to make sure that you're ready for it. And at the end of the day, yeah, you are accepting whatever you can't get rid of.
Awesome, dude. All right. Well, are there any other key themes here? So culture reform, we just touched security culture. Choke points, rate limiting, and export controls. Like, what are your thoughts on that one in terms of, is it happening? Is it going to happen? Where are we at with choke points?
I think that the choke points idea really is trying to limit at almost the nation state level who gets what technology. And I think that it's predicated on the idea that we have the best tech, and I don't know that that's necessarily true. We don't know what everyone else has, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. And even if we do, there's still other ways to get that technology. So, shutting down the ability to get microprocessors or semiconductors, those are all other ways to get them. We didn't say we're not selling them to anyone. We just said, well, not that guy, but that guy sells them to the guy we don't want.
This is fascinating, man. Like, I just, at a tactical, granular level, wanted to learn a term about AI security. And if the term is choke points, right? I asked the question, and the answer is like global geopolitics, nation level, like where, right? So this is certainly a theme as I wade more into AI and what's going on as I want to learn about it. My brain hurts from zooming out to the super macro view of society and then to the super micro view of how I can augment the piddliest little thing with AI, right? Like, is this a new phenomenon? Is that something that you feel too? And if so, how do you deal with that?
It's definitely something that I feel, and a lot of my colleagues feel, where we'll talk about implementing some code in Python, and then that's going to scale up to how are we feeding millions of people with
right.
this one line of code. And
actually, you mentioned a friend in agricultural AI research. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, he's building automated farming, both at the industrial level, at the local level, where you'll be able to grow your own gardens, like an apartment garden, something like that. And even at the smaller level, where it's going to be like toys, like a bonsai tree that takes care of itself, but you can talk to it and it'll tell you how it's doing. What? So there's so many different levels, and yet it's a small idea. It's like, oh, a toy tree that'll talk to you. That's great. But it's built on the same thing that's going to completely revolutionize agribusiness and feed a lot more people.
Wow.
Yeah, and the same thing happens. I think it's happened before. It happens with electricity. When we have microelectronics, we have small things that we go, okay, it'll move a motor. Great, that'll do something for me. Versus the entire power grid. There's we always tell we have elementary school kids make a potato battery, and it's the same thing as turbines or nuclear reactors. So it does. We've been doing this all the time. This is how technology works. And sometimes it's really, really fun to just start talking about what we're looking about in the future. It gets real wild, it gets real out there, and it's really fun.
That is fascinating. I mean, certainly the mission of cybersecurity and knowing that, protecting people in the fifth domain of cyberspace, and thinking about how exposed and how much important that work is to, society, but also how fun and fascinating it is to be a part of history as it unfolds with those in tech. It just moves so fast. It's so impactful. It's so disruptive. Certainly, that's a compelling mission to be joining. It's hard, right? It's hard to break in. It's hard to operate. We've got our only sleeping well because of the existential dread. But it certainly is meaningful and fascinating work. And I get to meet people like you that is just so fascinating to pick your brain. So, Phil, maybe ending on that point, is there any advice you would give to someone that wants to learn more about AI and maybe more about how to break into cybersecurity in the AI space? And then also just let us know how we can learn more from you. Where can we find you? And then we'll end it there.
Well, one of the things that I would suggest to anyone looking to get into this space, it's very similar to IT. It's very simple to cybersecurity. Start working on it. Start learning whatever you want to learn, and take that to its conclusion, because there's no end. There's never going to be any end, because no human brain can hold all of what we know about AI, even now. So it's a constant learning cycle. Talk to people, talk to professionals, meet with professionals. I moved out here to San Francisco for that very reason. I meet with professionals. I meet with students from Berkeley who are coming out and talking about things that I can't even fathom. It's like they speak a different language. And I'm talking to some of the researchers from Google and Anthropic who are like, oh yeah, when we built this thing, and we're going to build more, it's crazy. So we're all reachable. We can be contacted, and you should reach out. That's one of the things that I think most people don't understand, is that we love our jobs and we want to talk about our jobs. So when you get us talking about our jobs, we will not stop. So it really is a matter of just getting in there, getting your hands dirty, learning about what's going on. Sometimes it's reading papers. Sometimes it's reading papers back to ChatGPT and having ChatGPT tell you what the paper meant. If you don't understand it, do that. I've done that plenty, where I go, I don't understand what this says. ChatGPT, help. And ChatGPT will tell me, oh, okay, so I'll slow it down for you and I'll explain it.
Endless empathy from that coach and from that tutor that you can't get from a human. And so that's just very powerful capability for sure. Well, awesome.
And then it's definitely, go ahead.
And then, so I found you in the Simply Cyber Discord, AIML chat. I guess, is that the best place to find you, or any other resources that you could offer to viewers?
Well, I'm in the Discord. I'm in Simply Cyber all the time. You can always find me way early in the morning, because it's 8 o'clock Eastern. It's 5 o'clock Pacific.
That's right.
But if you want to dig in deeper, find me on LinkedIn, find my GitHub, check out my blog on Medium. I'm also spinning up a YouTube channel called Securing the Singularity, so watch for that soon.
Wow, I love the name, and that is, talk about a big, hairy, audacious goal there. Phil, thanks so much. Can't wait to talk to you and the rest of the community in Discord and in the broader community. See you next time.